and community. So the why of this project is because we know that today old growth forests are incredibly few, and actually there are people in the world who have never been present in front or standing in front of a 1,000-year-old being, which might be an old tree or an ancient forest. And this vision of this work that I'm doing together with communities around the world is to make this possible for those who are going to follow us, for those who are going to come after us. This work offers us deeper connection with nature, deeper sense of belonging to the place, hopefully long-term cultural, social, and ecological regeneration. And of course, creating those forests, those forest sanctuaries, improves the biosphere of the region and creating long-lasting effect for the generations that are going to follow us. So today I'm going to share with you the story of Eternal Forest. However, today I was sitting with this idea of what is the story and how is it actually being written. And I realized already since few months that Eternal Forest as a being is not a project, is not just something that's kind of I invented. It already has a body, a mind, a kind of a soul, spirit of its own. And it's writing their own story through us, through our actions and activities. So the story of Eternal Forest starts really when I moved from London in 2017 to Portugal to make it my home country. And I was driving through the country through kilometers of black stumps after the forest fires. 2017 was marked by massive fires in Portugal. We arrived to the country between the two fires. Here, what you see on this picture is area of Monchique, south of Portugal. We are looking from the mountain all the way down south to the sea, to Algarve region, very touristy area, but everything in between is basically productive monocultural forest of plantation of eucalyptus. I cannot call it a forest. This is very important. What we call a forest and what we call monoculture, we need to draw a line. So seeing all of that, and of course extending the understanding of deforestation and land degradation beyond Portugal to other places in the world, really was my motivation to start this project. And so as an artist, I was asking myself questions, how can I help? What can I do? At that point, I was living first months in the country, so I wanted to understand, but generally, how can art contribute to deepening our relationship with nature? How can we bring communities together to actually care for the forest and to connect with it, and how art can change our relationship with time from short-term to long-term thinking, from linear thinking to circular and cyclical thinking. And of course, how can we collaborate with plants, plant communities, forests, and the land? So at the beginning, I started off by listening to the people. That was my first entry point, because I wanted to understand how people feel, how they think about their forests, what are their needs, their stories, and their dreams, and how I could amplify these voices. So what I did is I went to an area called Goiás in Portugal 6 months after the devastating fires, and I worked with the local communities, interviewing people and creating this film called Eternal Forest, which I would like to show you a really brief bit here. You should be able to hear now.
Amor por isto, opa, eu sinto amor por isto, pronto, amor para tudo um pouco. Eu adoro a floresta, gosto de ter isto, só o ar que uma pessoa respira. E é, pronto, dá saúde e dá que se faz, pronto, é bom viver aqui na natureza, aqui na Vinagra.
A mim, a floresta para mim reflete vida, vida, porque a floresta é uma coisa com vida, porque uma floresta morta não é uma floresta.
Na verdade, a Europa ninguém quer eucaliptos plantados, mas querem papel. E então o Estado português assumiu que era este o país que ia alimentar isso.
O sonho seja termos uma floresta autóctone, biodiversa, em harmonia com o ser humano.
Se estivesse enraizado mais esse espírito de comunidade de todos, trabalharmos mais num objetivo, tivéssemos um objetivo definido, que todos tínhamos essa ideia, talvez houvesse um maior contributo para o próprio ambiente, não é? Porque todos pensaríamos e trabalharíamos para ele.
É toda uma experiência estética. As sombras, os luzes, o solo e depois, claro, a riqueza das espécies.
And I think I will be until Martin Luther, not King, the German one, the Reformator, said, if the world goes kaput tomorrow, I will plant my last tree today.
So after I made this film, I took it to many different locations in Portugal and in the UK, and I really tried to go to as many communities, cultural centers, universities as I could, just to connect with the audiences, connect with the people, because what I wanted to understand, I wanted to extend that deep listening beyond, and I wanted to hear messages that are coming from people. And I also used these conversations with people to create visual works and to create poetry that's written in the cycle of eternal forest. And here you can see some examples of my visual works that's connecting poetry and calligraphy. But I also felt at this point that just raising awareness through film, through visual works, through poetry is perhaps not enough. So I decided that maybe the next step would be listening to the land. Also, there is one more thing that kind of did not really work for me, because everybody in all the conversations and all the screenings were saying, well, okay, well, we don't plant monocultures, we don't plant eucalyptus. Well, what's other solutions for planting productive forest and having this sustainability from the forest? And something was kind of missing in this narrative. So what I wanted to understand is what is actually missing. So I worked, I did some work in a place called Coruche. It's in the center of Portugal. I did actually application for another art residency 1 year later after I did the first one. And my proposition was, what if we actually created sanctuary in the forest? Sorry, I'm just skipping through some slides for some reason. And what if this sanctuary would not be that huge? It would be about 10 to 20 hectares. What would it be? What would it mean to protect it for 100 years and bring the whole community on board for that? And so that provocation was accepted by the municipality that invited me to do this residency. And so I ended up working on this project for about 2 months, based locally in the forest, based locally in this town, but also working in my studio. And what came out of that is this kind of extended idea of necessity of creating physical forest sanctuaries, the kind of sacred space and time, the nature's temple for us and for nature to connect. And the way I approach it is to bring in people into the forest, creating an artistic trail based on poetry, natural landmarks. But also during this year, when I was working on developing this concept and working with the land, I wrote manifesto. And that is where the being of the forest comes in. That's where the being of trees come in. I think I've been always aware that trees are alive, that are living beings, that never had, it was never a question to me. But what actually happened is that was the first moment when trees communicated to me. So what happened is I had a dream. I think forests and trees, they know that I am very connected with my dream world. So they find a way to connect with each of us through the senses that we are most attuned with, that are most open. And for me, it's a dream world. So when I was writing down this manifesto, when it was coming through me, I was working for about 2 months straight on in my studio, and I had a dream about a sacred tree. And I'm going to read to you a bit of manifesto, which actually describes that moment, that message of the tree and that being of the tree, that kind of came to me in a specific appearance and tried to communicate something. And so it's really in the center of Eternal Forest Manifesto. So it goes like this. In the hollow trunk of world tree rests eternal time. From eternal decay, a dream is born, a seed of sacred tree, a tree of all seeds, a tree of sacred forest, a tree with 3 visible paths engraved in its body, a tree with 7 visible notches to hold the bow, a slender bow for a human hand, to reach invisible roots, a tree with roots in invisible worlds, to receive the gift of impossible time, uncut, uneven, unbroken, unknown, unknowable, indivisible, before history, before territory, before time. All things living joined together in ways unimaginable, unwritten, untold, unviolated, imperfect, misunderstood. So I have this small roll of manifesto. It's a heart roll, as I call it. I put it in my pocket and I take it to the forest. And sometimes I read it to people and sometimes I read it to the forest and the trees. And this reading of manifesto accompanies emergence of every eternal forest sanctuary and initiation and every experience of eternal forest that I do. There's also a series of eternal forest experiences that I create in the land, listening to the land, what she wants to communicate to us, but also being oriented by the natural landmarks in the forest, like large trees, old trees, and I call them oracle trees, the trees that are slowly becoming stumps, but they're higher, and they're the ones who are usually giving us a message or asking us a question. Big rocks, a little pond, a little clearing in the forest. So, and then I bring people onto that experience. I truly believe that, yes, we need to go to the forests and we need to stay there and we need to slow ourselves down to go and sit in specific places and make this relationship our own and develop this relationship step by step, day after day. So what is really an eternal forest sanctuary? For me, how I receive it from the project, from the being of eternal forest, it is a nature's temple. It's basically a space and time for us to commune with nature. It's also large-scale ecological art that requires multidisciplinary approach, and hopefully it invites many more artists to create those places around the world. It's not just for me and it's not just done by myself. There are many more artists already entering this network. It also has a focus on community, because I believe that community will support the protection of those places, and communities engaged through the cycles, natural cycles of artistic experiences, celebrations, ceremonies. So as I said before, I'm creating various artistic experiences. I'm connecting with artists around the world to invite them to initiate an eternal forest where they live with their community, with their forest. And hopefully we'll be collaborating and creating a network of residences where a focus is on co-creating with nature, on collaboration with nature and the local ecosystem. I believe that community is really central, and what recently Eternal Forest communicated to me is that we as humans have to reconstruct the most powerful form that we have is the circle. So circle of guardians in each and every place where sanctuaries are to emerge is this basic form where people get together around the vision and they can make it happen. This is our circle of guardians in Ericeira in Portugal, where I live, and we've been meeting now for 1 year. We're currently searching for land. And then how do we approach working with the land? So this is this part is really focused on today's topic and conversation. So I do believe that deep listening is really the key, and it's both physical body listening, but also non-physical listening, opening all of our senses, including all the senses that we explore through dreaming. And I mean by dreaming the moment when we sleep, when we receive information and we connect into the field in dreams, but also when we go intentionally to dream with the land. And I'm going to give you one particular example. And then of course, we have to wait until the land gives us an answer how to work with her. She has her own way of being and doing, and she always wants to communicate. We just need to really know that when we are there, we need to ask her permission and we need to listen. And then all the collaborations that happen professionally around regenerating biodiversity and recreating forest for the future is always with the focus on co-creating with nature. So I invite people to create these cycles of deep listening with communities of plants, with communities of people, and with the future. So basically seeing through the veil what's in the future and how this future is affecting us, and imagining this future, and always being focused on the processes that are in the land already, not kind of trying to impose things being done faster, for example. So this is one of the examples that I wanted to share with you, and one particular situation. I've done kind of a mini vision quest on the land where we are creating Forest Sanctuary. It's a regenerative project of a future co-housing community. And what happened there is I was staying with the land for 2 days, and I wanted to listen what the land has to say. And actually, I wanted to show you this picture first. I skipped it. So I walked the land and for 2 days, and I kind of tried to map out where is the sanctuary, because not all of the land will become sanctuary. And I came to this very old cork oak tree. I believe she's a mother tree. She's really big, and she's kind of a little bit dominating the area, the forest around her, with lots of little saplings and lots of other smaller cork oak trees. Now in Portugal, you might know that cork is taken from the trees for production of cork. So the bark is taken, and people believe that it's okay for the tree, but actually it really depends how you do it and how long you're doing this for. So this tree is quite old, and I think it was damaged by the way people were taking the bark. And when I went around the tree, although the tree looked completely fine at the front, I walked around and she was already kind of hollowed out and rotting, and the roots were rotting too. So I kind of felt sad, and I started talking with this tree. I started listening what she has to say, and she said, it's okay, go listen to the land. The land has a message for you. And so I did. And the message was, this is exactly what the land told me, the land in Abrigada, this is the name. She said, I want to heal, I want to establish my natural flow, which was disrupted. And I want to return my sovereignty and sovereignty of beings within me, which means all the plants, all the animals, insects, and so on. And we need to support that process. So so that's why one of the first activities that I propose to any community is to really vision quest personally. So it can be a solo experience, it can be communal experience, but it's really to let a land speak. And so what we're doing right now, just to kind of give you a larger perspective and where we are focusing on creating blueprint for forest sanctuaries in the next 5 years. And we are going to work with about 6 different locations that in different contexts in terms of protection and the state of the forest, with different types of communities, and basically run these circles, help them to be established, and let people share the findings, the wisdom, the knowledge that comes through this process, and then hopefully share this blueprint with the world. And these are just some of the activities that people might need to do, like finding the land, listening to the guidance of the land, and then some really practical ones like organizational structure, funding, legal advice, and seeing what kind of partnerships can be done locally. And of course, building this kind of community engagement and letting people go to the forest. I'm very much seeing those places as places for both nature and people to come together. Places that are more or less modeled on sacred groves and sacred forests of the past. Some of them hopefully will be ancestral forests, which means burial forests as well. But at the moment, we're really focusing on kind of celebratory place where children can learn deep ecology, where people who are really want to tune in with nature, with their forest, with the plants, with the animals, with the spirit of this place, can come and ground themselves and receive this wisdom and just, yeah, whatever questions they're holding. So this is where we are. This is what we're doing at the moment. We're identifying locations, partners. We're bringing together advisory board and applying for funding to be able to launch the blueprint. And at the same time, as we are focusing, working in Portugal, we are also looking very much outwards and linking and mapping all the different possible sanctuaries where people basically would like to create their own. So if you answer any of these questions, yes, then most likely you could already join and reach out, and we could talk about this possibility. So if you are an artist, or if you're a community person and you already have community that's interested, if you have land or your cultural center with the land, then you could reach out. And these are all the different ways that we could connect. There is a website, and you could just send me an email, follow us on Instagram, and there is a Facebook group that's open. It's called Eternal Forest. So I think we have a couple of more minutes, if I'm not mistaken, and I prepared a little postscriptum for you. Last year, I was working on a project in Mertola. It's south of Portugal, close to Spanish border, an area that is going very fast towards desertification. And I was working in the context of a municipality, art residency offered by a municipality. I made a film, which is a series of interviews with local people talking about the future. So I asked all the questions from the point of dreaming about the future in 100 years. So transcending a kind of short-term thinking, at least a little bit. But also when I was there, I asked the land, well, how do you want me to speak within this project? And the land told me, I want you to speak from the I, as if I'm speaking. So I'm going to speak through you, and you're going to talk to people. And I want you to talk to people in the way that they do not feel guilty about what has been happening here, but they feel hopeful. So I'm going to read to you 2 poems, which is part of this film. And then the film will be released later. And if you are interested, you can contact me and I will send you the link. When all your streams are bare, you turn to me. When all your soil is desert, you turn to me. When all your food is poisoned, you turn to me. When all your seeds are fruitless, you turn to me. When all your kin is crying, you turn to me. When all your days are counted, you turn to me. Where do you end? Where do I begin? Think of me as we, us, them, the wild ones in their dance, the bitter medicine of our roots, the shared language of our truth, the common lineage of our kin, the daring ripeness of our will, the sentient beauty of our laws, the peaceful weaver of our worlds, the ancient pollen of our being, the timeless presence of our dreaming. Where do I end? Where do you begin? And so with this, I'm inviting you for a new conversation, for a new possibility of a new kind of conversation with the land. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Evgenia. That was just totally heartwarming, and I really resonate with so much of what you have to say. It's on a lesser scale, and a lot of what I'm doing here in our local community as well. So let's loop in and have a chat and extend this global network. It's wonderful. Well, it appears that we actually have no open questions in the Q&A box, but Mike can just, I think we're all just floored with the beauty. And I don't know if anybody can hear through my microphone right now, but we have torrential rain that's just arrived on my outside. So it's just saying, giving gratitude to the waters of this world. Mike, I believe you had a question for Evgenia to put into the space. So yeah, take it away.
Wonderful. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. So Evgenia, you are multicultural, you are multilingual, you are well-traveled, you are sensitive, you are articulate. So I'm wondering what other cultures have influenced your view on trees and nature. What other people look to Mother Trees and have influenced your thinking and your emotions?
Thank you, Mike. That's a really beautiful question. Thank you so much. Well, I grew up in Ukraine and Russia, and now actually being in Bielovesia forest right now on the border of Poland and Belarus, and with a lot of people speaking Russian here, I do believe it's Slavic culture. I don't want to call it Russian. It's a stretch of Slavic culture with different variety of Slavic tribes. I think it's one of the cultures that has still very strong connection, sacred relationship, that feeling of sacredness of nature. I know that there is a huge recovery of that culture in the form of finding ancient sacred groves and discovering the places of power. It's not an easy process, because I think it's very tricky when somebody says, I have a special place in the forest. And of course, it can be linked with kind of extreme nationalism, and, you know, it's kind of suddenly everything is political. But I do feel that connection strongly. And then my grandfather, it was actually born in Siberia. I have to say, I never went there, and I would love to go and connect with that land. He was born in a place that until today you can only reach by the rivers or helicopter. And so and I'm being constantly drawn to the Russian forests, and being here right now is already good enough, because Bielovesia is really, yeah, is really as special. Yesterday I went to what they call kurgans, the ancient burials, which is right behind the village where I'm staying. So obviously this settlement where I'm now located is ancient, so people have been burying their ancestors in this forest, and it's incredibly powerful place. I just go there and sit with these old trees, but also with this feeling of that people had towards their forest. Like the forest was everything for them, and it was the place where they constantly returned, because life renews, but also spirit renews there. And so yes, I think, but then of course in the more modern, in the last few years, I think that the great writers and scientists who have been kind of uncovering leaf by leaf the scientific connection and showing us the proof of plant intelligence and the sentience of the forest, like Monica Gagliano, Peter Valeben, and Susan Zimmert, who is here with us today. So these are my kind of gods of the people who I respect a lot, because they go until the point where this message is passed to so many people. This is just incredible.
Very good. Thank you. I just want to share that your poetry today has touched me deeply.
Thank you. Thank you. I've received a very strong message from Eternal Forest that I should be writing from the perspective of the plants, the animals, the beings, and I feel this is something that maybe we could start doing more as creative people, and just as people, putting ourselves in the position of the plant, of the forest, of the little grove, and seeing, receiving the messages, listening and seeing how they feel, how they are, and being able to communicate from their point, kind of to remove sometimes our human being. I do feel it's a little bit shamanic, this way of being, kind of shifting in and out of human being, but plants do it constantly with us. They come to us, they nurture us, they nourish us, and so why not we can do the same for them.
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that extra dimension, Evgenia. I feel really connected in the sense that I know that my peoples bump into your peoples in many ways, my ancestors kind of in that Russian Chinese realm of what is now known, and so I can just see that there's the land that connects all of us, actually, you know, and feel that really strongly. We've got another couple of questions that have popped up now, which is really lovely. Catherine, thank you for shining the light on me, but we can connect on Hoover later on my own personal projects. Lionel says, how do you create a forest in a semi-desert?
Lionel, great question. We are having a lot of these situations in Portugal, in the south of River Tagus. Yeah, step by step. I mean, there are techniques and ways to basically water retention. So planting strata. I mean, it's really hard to plant oaks, for example, directly into the land. That's that's very degraded, but also that's very dry. But there are ways. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm working with specialists. I'm creating circle of collaborators, people who are doing ecosystem restoration, scientists, and there are many techniques. And they actually just visited a project in the south of Portugal, where land is being regenerated to go towards the forest. So I'm going to start one of the projects there. So I'm also super eager to learn. I'm very new to all of this.
Beautiful. On that note, I know that there's a few beautiful videos on YouTube somewhere on this idea of greening, making oases in desert, and I really enjoyed watching those for a while. It's so fascinating, and active collaboration with land. And Karen Copez, our beautiful presenter from earlier today, asks, I think that we are part of the same land network, and am just starting to learn how to be a steward for young forest land. How did you learn to trust listening to the land?
That's an amazing question. I think for me, the process is start trusting listening to myself. Yeah, it took a long time, I have to say, but step by step, I think once we trust ourselves, trust our gut feeling, our intuition, and we are open and courageous, we have to be courageous and really say, okay, I'm gonna go all into that. And then, yeah, and then go and ask her. A lot of land wants to heal, and a lot of land needs healing, and she needs our help and support. There is actually, if you watch the film, I think it's called Aluna, it's about disruptions in the natural flow on the land and how they can be mended, and what it means when we disrupt the natural flow. How does it affect everything else? How does it affect the whole ecosystem? So it's really, really important to learn to see where these pinpoints are and how we can start reconnecting things. We don't sometimes need to do anything artificially, just need to remove disruptions and remove ourselves actually usually from certain spots, and then she will heal. But sometimes we need to design in a way, co-design with her, and that's why this moment of listening is super important, so we can co-design together with the ecology, with the ecosystem, not just putting our kind of own blueprint or big map on top of it, but actually going together with her from the roots towards the light.
It was so beautiful. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to wrap up. I love this, how the question and answer box starts to act like a bit of a forest when we let it. But yeah, just my heartfelt gratitude to you, Evgenia. Thank you for sharing your vision and your art and your empathy and your heart with this world. It's, really, truly the medicine of our times. For those of you who have asked questions, I'm sure that Evgenia has a presence on the Hoover platform and would welcome kind of further engagement. There has been a request to just reiterate the project and some of the links to your project, so maybe we can flash that up. Of course, this recording will be made available on our YouTube channel in due course as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Evgenia, and I look forward to having more conversations as the time kind of.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for all of your questions and notes. I've read all of them, and I acknowledge. Thank you for sharing those. Yes, all the contacts are on recording, but also on my speaker's profile, so you can just go there and send me a message if you want link to the films, and I will send it to you. Thank you so much for hosting.